What's going on, everyone? Welcome on this beautiful Friday morning, afternoon. I think afternoon. Anyway, I want to have a talk about give some tips to my fellow artists out there. If you're just starting out with art, you're new to it, or you're not quite sure, how to get to where you want to go. Here's a few tips. Here's one tip I have. Right? There's a bunch of them, but I'm just gonna give you one. Learn and understand the materials that you're using. Okay, that's very, very important. Learn and understand the materials that you're using, or the medium. The medium. Okay, understand your mediums. And I say that because when you're in the process of making art of any kind, what you want is for yourself and for others to be satisfied with what they see, the end result. And the way you do that is, depending on the materials that you have, you will learn that certain materials work better with others. Certain pencils work better with certain paper. Ink pens, markers, paints, the different kinds of paints, different paper. It's not all, well, I have a pencil, I have a paper. Well, I mean, it can be that, but there's so much material out there. And if you want to have the best results for your work, you want to know which materials work best with each other. For instance, if you have a canvas, a painting canvas, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to put watercolor on a canvas. Canvas is usually a material meant for acrylic paint. Why? Because of the consistency of the canvas, or the texture of the canvas, in relation to the consistency of the paint. Watercolor is water based, meaning water is easy to run. It gravity take it over and water would just flow down. You don't really want that on something like canvas. You want something that's going to stick to the canvas, okay? That's going to stay put on the canvas, and when it dries, or even if it's wet, it will stay there. That's why people use acrylic paint on canvas. Okay? Now, or the same thing, if you were to have acrylic paint on paper, right? Because paper is thinner than canvas, the weight the weight of the acrylic paint will most likely tear right through the paper. Okay? So you want to be mindful of that. That's what I mean by understanding your materials. Okay? Learn about them, understand them. Understand that there are different types of paper, or what they call a gauge. Paper has thickness, or gauges. It's called gauges. And depending on the thickness or gauge of the paper, will let you know the kind of materials that are best used for that kind of paper. Okay, you wouldn't even put watercolor paint on paper as thin as a newspaper, because if you ever feel newspaper, for those who even know what newspaper is very, very thin, very, very thin, very, very light, very thin gauge. Okay, can't hold much but ink, and not even a lot of ink, just a little bit of ink. If you were to put watercolor on newspaper, the water will overtake the thickness of the newspaper. So you wouldn't do that. Or how about Xerox paper or copying paper? Same thing. Copying paper isn't thick enough to hold water. It'll run right through, and before you know it, it'll end up tearing. So you want to know if you're going to use watercolor on paper, you have to find paper that's thick enough to hold the water and not bleed through and tear it. So you get that way. You got to know the different types of paper. They come in all different shapes, colors, and sizes, and thick. You can tell by the weight. It'll tell you on the package the how many sheets there are, the thickness or the gauge, all of that. Um, if it's what they call is acid, like you can also tell by if I'm pretty sure me and Austin have done this. If you're ever drawing on paper and all of a sudden you feel like a like kind of like a itchiness on the side of your hand, and it feels like it's irritated, that lets you know that most likely that paper was what they call acid wash, meaning they use a kind of acid to clean the paper. Okay, all of those things come into play when it comes to sketchbooks. Not all sketchbooks are the same. Me personally, I like sketchbooks that have thick paper, like moleskin. Moleskin has thick paper. I love moleskin because the paper is thick. You can paint. You can paint on it. Watercolor paint. It takes really well to watercolor. It takes well to marker. It takes well to ink and pencil. So it's overall a good choice for you to use. Like, or you can go to Walmart. You can go to Walmart and buy a real inexpensive sketchbook. I have a couple of them. It takes good. It takes really well to. It's thick enough where it could take watercolor, but not too much. Not too much watercolor. It could take marker, but after a while, like if you oversaturate the paper, it'll kind of feather. Feathering is when the paper goes from a smooth texture to like it gets rough. You start seeing these little, they're like feathers coming up out of the paper. That means that the paper has reached its stress point, and any more marker gets put on there, it'll begin to tear. It takes really well to pencil and really well to pen. Pencils. There are different types of pencils. What? Yes, there are different types of pencils. It goes from what they call H to B. It's like a scale. Okay. You have like 8H all the way up to 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, H. Then you have HB. You have B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all that stuff. HB, when it's in the middle, the HB pencil is the pencil that is used in school, the number 2 pencil. The number 2 pencil is in the middle. The number 2 pencil that you have in school is an HB pencil. Okay? But once you go to the high number H's and the high number B's, it changes. And what changes? The pencil's made of graphite. Graphite is carbon. Okay? And depending on how tight the graphite is, your lines that you put on the paper will either be very, very light or very, very dark. Okay? So be mindful of that. There are different types of pencils. You have different types of charcoal. Those like to use charcoal drawings, you know this. Not all charcoal is the same. You have different grades of charcoal. Same thing with the H and the B scale. It's the same thing with charcoal. You have the H and 4H and 3H, 2H, HB. You got the B's on up. Same thing. Markers. Not all markers are the same. You have your inexpensive washable markers you can get at Walmart, or you have which is the most popular markers to use for many artists, is the Copic. Copic, C-O-P-I-C. Copic markers are alcohol based. They don't work well with thin paper. Like if you have a pretty good gauge of paper, like what they call stock paper, like you can go to Walmart and get some stock paper, like a 3x5 card or something like that. The gauge for a 3x5 index card or stock card paper is really, really good for Copic markers. It takes really, really well. The color remains vibrant because after a while, a lot of markers, once you put the marker down, once you put the marker on the paper and time has passed, the vibrancy of the color that you have fades away a little bit because the marker has dried up. Once the marker dries, the vibrancy fades. So what you want is a marker that's going to remain vibrant regardless. So if you have like a red, you want the red to remain that same red even after it dries. And some markers just don't do that. But Copic does. Copic has a bunch of different colors. You can tell the colors by these alphanumerics on the cap of the marker. You have the letter, then you have the numbers, right? And it tells you the family. It tells you what color it's in. It tells you the color. It tells you the family, meaning if it's a variation of a different. Like, you got your primary colors, you got your secondary, tertiary, and then you have variations throughout that just branch out into infinite. All right? All those matter. Or if you say, okay, if you're not using paper or the traditional way, you have computers. Software also matters in the material because now you're changing a different medium. So you got to take that into consideration. Learn that also. Understand the materials that you're using. Understand the tools that you're using. Okay? Understand what goes best with what. And when you understand that particular, I don't want to say philosophy, but when the math adds up, you will see the best results for what you want because in your mind you have an idea. In your mind you have an idea. And you want to bring forth that idea exactly how you saw it in your mind. Which means you may have to invest in materials. So you may have to invest in materials that help you achieve that goal. I mean, go online, do some research, look at different sketchbooks, different companies that have sketchbooks, look at different markers, different crayons, different pencils, easels. All this stuff matters. Now, it always comes down to you, the artist, the individual, yes. But you have to know, okay, what is out there? What are my choices out there available to me that I can use to help me facilitate this idea? Okay? So that is the art tip. The art tip is understand your materials. Okay? Learn and understand your materials. Your art supplies. I'll say that. Understanding your art supplies. Okay? It'll help you alleviate a lot of stress. If you're getting frustrated, you want to know why is it not looking like this? Why is it not coming out like this? Learn, understand your art materials, your art supplies. Okay? Thank you all for listening. Catch you all later. Peace.